He said, "You don't need to come to the launch." Just like that. After 10 years of late nights, editing decks, rewriting his bios, building the very pitch that got him there. I was uninvited from the moment I helped create. No +1. No backstage pass. Not even a seat. I nodded. And made one quiet call. The night before the event, he rehearsed his speech in our living room. I knew every word, because I wrote most of them. He stood there in his tailored navy suit, practicing. Charisma like it was currency. He looked right past me. As if I were a lamp. As if I hadn't bled into every sentence he planned to say. And I smiled. When he left that morning, I kissed his cheek. He didn't notice that I hadn't asked for the address. Didn't notice I wasn't wearing the ring. Didn't notice that my laptop wasn't on the kitchen table. He assumed my silence meant submission. It didn't. It meant strategy. I waited until his car pulled away. Made tea. Opened the encrypted file on my laptop. Labeled, proof. Inside, receipts, drafts, wire transfers, emails with timestamps. Every trace of my labor, invisible to the world, yet foundational to his empire. Then I opened my phone. And called Clarice Holt speaking. She remembered me instantly. "Elise. I still use your narrative framework from that Harvard talk." I told her everything in 5 minutes. No crying. No accusations. Just links. Attachments. And one sentence, "You're funding a man built on silence." She didn't hesitate. "Forward everything to my legal team. I'll take it from here." She didn't ask what I wanted. She already knew. Some women don't need instructions. Just proof. And motive. At 11:52 a.m., I received a text, "Thank you. I just left his green room." 7 words. Enough to shift the ground beneath his podium. Enough to confirm that my absence was louder than any applause. Enough to know he saw her face before he saw the audience. Enough. He stood there in front of flashing cameras. A room filled with investors. The culmination of a decade. And suddenly, the numbers he rehearsed felt small against the silence I left behind. Because power isn't always presence. Sometimes, it's a withheld seat. Back home, I poured champagne. 1 glass. No toast. Just closure. Because he launched a company. But I launched the truth. And the fallout was still on its way. The doorbell rang that evening. I didn't answer. I let the chime echo. Like every idea I wrote that bore his name. He was knocking on a door he no longer recognized. Because I was no longer behind it. And I wasn't coming back. We met at a tech meetup in San Francisco. He was pitching his first startup, scrappy, hopeful, raw. I sat in the audience, notebook open, pen ready. I offered feedback afterward, clarity on narrative, emotional connection. He smiled, said, "You see it." And I believed I was seeing him. But he saw me as a tool. We started dating soon after. He treated me like a partner on stage, introducing me as my creative anchor. I coached his investor pitches, wrote his deck headlines. Rewrote his bio until it glowed. I didn't hide in the shadows. I stepped in by his side. Because when you build someone, you build a life. We moved in together after 6 months. Our apartment filled with whiteboards and manuscripts. I balanced revisions with grocery trips. He balanced forecasts with investor relations. I believed we were equal parts in a shared journey. But I started waking up to power inferences. One person spoke louder on calls. Within 2 years, his startup scaled. Funding closed. Headlines followed. He was invited to panels, podcasts, award shows. I stayed behind, as his writer, coach, voice. His picture showed success. Mine showed work. And I thought that was okay. We got married in year 3. A small ceremony in the backyard. He thanked me in his vows, mentioned every word you breathed into my brand. But when the cameras clicked, my thanks disappeared from the official video. He said it was an editing oversight. I believed him at the time. I didn't know acknowledgement could be stolen. We co-wrote a book. Signed publishing deals in our joint name. He accepted the paycheck. I ghostwrote the chapters. Their blurbs mentioned him. Not we. And I learned part ownership didn't feel like ownership. Years passed. Infighting began. Arguments about editing credits, stage time, image rights. He said it was business. We said it was personal. I softened my tone to smooth tensions. But each adjustment shrank my voice. Then came the big pivot. A new product launch. Board ready. Investors hyped. I wrote the headlines. I wrote the narrative. I wrote the starring line. But I didn't get the invite. He called it an all men in whiteboard room moment. I told him I wrote those whiteboards. He laughed. And I felt the walls close in. The anniversary that year, he gifted me flowers. Said, "Thanks for everything." On stage. In front of press. Backstage. He didn't even thank me when the cameras turned off. His grip on public gratitude was tight. For private appreciation, tight-lipped. I asked for formal credit. For the book. For the brand. He said it'd get added later. He didn't do it. He never did. By year 8, I realized what many didn't see. I was ghosted. By the man who said he built with me. I was the pen behind the name. I was the draft beneath the shine. And I hadn't noticed I'd been edited out. He stopped introducing me at events. Not rudely, just vaguely. "This is Elise," he'd say, like I was a colleague, not the woman who built his vision into syntax. I smiled anyway. Because I thought my reward would come later. Recognition. Delayed, not denied. I was wrong. He removed my name from the company blog. Said it looked better streamlined. But he kept quoting my phrases in interviews. Lines I tested on late nights over wine and whiteboards. I watched him take applause for my language. And I stayed quiet. Because what do you do when the thief is your husband? He stopped looping me in on funding meetings. Said, "This one's too technical." Even though I wrote his white paper. Even though I coached him through his TEDx draft. I began to understand, he wasn't just distancing. He was deleting. He'd come home from dinners with investors. I'd ask who was there. He'd say, "Just the guys." But one night, I saw a name on a receipt. Isabel. His new communications lead. She had my old role, and my old words. He started locking his office door. Not for security, he claimed, just focus. But I knew the rhythm of secrets. He kept his notebooks turned face down. His emails password locked. Transparency faded quietly. Like smoke from a candle I didn't blow out. He flinched when I brought up the book we co-wrote. Said it was a moment in time. I asked if it could be republished under both names. He didn't answer. Just left the room. And I stood in the silence he used as a wall. He booked panels without me. Work I contributed to, presented by others. I'd find out after, through social media tags. One post read, "Nathan Warren, the mind behind the launch." I wrote that caption 3 months earlier. In a draft folder he never deleted. When I offered edits on a new speech, he snapped, "I've got it." He never used to speak like that. But now, I was the background noise. Not the backbone. He wanted the empire, but not the evidence of who helped build it. He updated his LinkedIn bio. Removed, built in partnership with Elise Warren. I had written that sentence myself. It vanished with one click. And no conversation. I messaged him from my office. He didn't respond. He changed the passcodes on our shared drive. No warning. I couldn't access the archive I created. Drafts, designs, branding guidelines. He acted like I'd been archived too. I wasn't his co-founder anymore. I was a liability to his version of the story. One night, I overheard a call. He said, "She's not really involved now." I was 10 feet away. Holding a proposal I wrote. He didn't see me. Or maybe, he didn't want to. He created a founding story video. I wasn't in it. Not one image. Not one mention. I watched it premiere at 2 a.m. Alone in the kitchen. Every frame built from my forgotten drafts. He gave Isabel credit for a line I wrote 5 years ago. Called her a fresh voice. I felt something in me go still. Not anger. Not pain. Just the final layer of understanding. I was never going to be seen again. Our anniversary dinner that year? Cancelled. He forgot. Said a board dinner came up. I sat at the restaurant anyway. Alone. Because grief doesn't need company to arrive. That was when I started collecting emails, drafts, edits, bank records showing wire transfers from my personal savings into his launch fund. Screenshots of contracts I negotiated. I labeled the folder, "If I disappear." But I didn't. I sharpened. I found out about the launch via press release. Not from Nathan. Not from his team. But from a Google alert with his name in bold, a headline I didn't write this time, "The visionary behind VoltNet, Nathan Warren prepares for major reveal." I refreshed the page twice. The date was a Thursday. I checked the shared calendar. It was empty. He had removed it. Silently. Like deleting a draft. Like deleting me. That night, I asked, casually, "So what's happening Thursday?" He didn't flinch. Just smiled. "Oh, it's just a small investor gathering. Not really public." I nodded. And memorized that lie. The next morning, I saw his suit at the dry cleaners. The one he wore for major interviews. A new tie, deep crimson. Symbol of arrival. He laid it out on our bed. Didn't ask if I liked it. Didn't need to anymore. 2 days before the event, a FedEx package arrived. Inside, press passes. 2 of them. One for Nathan. One for Isabel. My name was nowhere. Not on the guest list. Not in the launch material. Not even in the footnotes. He left the passes on the counter, right next to the empty coffee mug I used to refill every morning. He looked at me and said, "Don't wait up Thursday night. It might go late. No kiss. No question. Just instructions. That evening, I opened my inbox. Found drafts of the keynote speech. Not sent to me, but shared to Isabel. But the intro was mine. Copied from a 2019 talk I gave for his beta pitch. Word for word. Except my name was gone. The company posted a teaser video. A montage of his journey. Photos, whiteboards, late nights. One shot caught my hand on a laptop. But it was cropped. I recognized the sleeve. But no one else would. A journalist reached out. Asked if I wanted to give a quote. I said, I don't speak for Voltnet. He said, but you were there, right? I smiled. Sometimes being there isn't the same as being acknowledged. He paused. And understood. Thursday came. He left without a word. No goodbye. No look back. The door clicked behind him. And something inside me closed with it. I didn't cry. I opened the folder labeled, If I Disappear. Renamed it, If He Launches. And dragged it into a zip file. I texted Clarice. One sentence, he's on stage tomorrow. You should see what I've collected. She called in under 3 minutes. I didn't tell her what to do. I didn't ask for revenge. Just clarity. Because if he was rewriting history, I had the original draft. And it was time to publish. The night of the launch, I stayed home. Not because I was weak. But because I wanted to feel everything in full volume. I wanted the absence to echo. And it did, in every untouched glass, every unanswered chair. The apartment was quieter than I remembered. I poured a glass of wine. Not to celebrate. Not to drown. Just to hold something that didn't lie to me. The screen showed photos of him on stage, spotlighted, praised, surrounded. I turned the brightness down. I scrolled through the launch live stream. His voice played. In the background like white noise. He used my phrases again. Purpose-driven innovation. Narrative alignment with user friction. Terms I coined during midnight edits. He didn't flinch saying them. Because he believed they were his now. He introduced Isabel as our voice of clarity. I stared at that phrase. That exact phrase. I wrote it once, in a side comment, for a press release I revised while sick with the flu. She said it with pride. He nodded with ownership. I shut the laptop. Sat on the kitchen floor. Let my back hit the cabinets. Tiled cold under me. Silence above me. And still, I didn't cry out. I looked around at what was left. The shelf of books with his name. Half of which I wrote. Framed headlines quoting him. Built from my rewrites. A printer blinking low ink, like it was tired too. Everything looked borrowed. My phone buzzed. A friend sent a photo. Wasn't this your tagline? Attached was a screenshot of a slide, my sentence, my tone, my rhythm. Under Voltnet's new branding. Credited to Isabel. I stood up slowly. Walked to my desk. Opened the drawer he never touched. Pulled out the old notebook, the one with his first idea. I had scribbled the first version of the company name on the corner. It was mine. All of it had been. I opened my notes app. Typed one sentence, he didn't launch a company. He erased a woman. And saved it. For me. For whatever would come. Next. Because pain with no outlet becomes poison. I stopped answering calls. Not out of bitterness. Out of preservation. People wanted reactions, statements, sides. I wanted quiet. Because in the aftermath of erasure, noise feels like theft too. I lit a candle that night. A simple one. Scented with cedar and resolve. Let it burn until dawn. Because some grief doesn't need a scream. It needs a witness. And I chose to be. By morning, something shifted. Not peace. Not revenge. Just readiness. A whisper inside that said, you've gathered enough. Now move. And so, I moved. Not out of the apartment. But out of the version of me who begged to be seen. I wasn't going to ask again. Because I remembered something vital. The blueprint wasn't just in the folder. It was in me. I woke the next morning with clarity. The address of Clarice's global summit sat in my inbox. She'd asked me to speak, unscheduled, unannounced. I realized I had leverage. Not anger. But the power of truth. My laptop blinked with draft slides. Alone. One titled, The Pen Behind the Launch. Slide notes listing dates, edits, wire transfers, all time-stamped. I wasn't seeking revenge. I was seeking clarity for everyone. I scheduled a meeting with Nathan's CFO. She met me in the empty boardroom, midweek. I handed over folders, draft decks, email threads, bonus payouts tied to content. She leaned in. Her eyes widened. Silence spoke louder than spreadsheets. Simultaneously, I emailed Voltnet's PR team, please verify copyrights on launch materials. No accusations. Just legal implications. I didn't shout. I initiated due process. Clarice stepped in. Within hours, media buzz shifted. An insider leak, Voltnet's launch built on uncredited ghostwriter. Not attack. Just facts. Discreet. But effective. I met with Clarice 2 hours later. She patted my hand. Your voice matters, especially when it's behind other voices. She offered me a board advisory seat. And a co-author credit on the launch playbook. Not charity. Recognition. Nathan's phone call slowed. Investor updates. Arrived via email. He removed Isabel's feature line from the site. But mine appeared, my name, my role, my story. Line by line. Words he couldn't delete. Voltnet's website updated, core content created by Elise Warren. Underneath, case studies with my voice. It wasn't grand applause. It was formal. Permanent. Clarice invited me to lead a panel, my pick. On women in tech whose work remains in the shadows. I chose to share mine. Without venom. Just vocabulary, examples, proof. Within weeks, media outlets quoted me. Terms like ghost voice to thought leader trended. I spoke at networking lunches. People asked, what's next? I replied, recognition. Authorship. Legacy. He texted that night, can we talk? I want to fix this. I forwarded it to Clarice. She replied, site first. Then talk. I didn't call back. A month later, Voltnet announced, Elise Warren appointed senior content advisor. My name spun on social feeds. But I didn't promote it. Because validation had already evolved. From silence to structure, the final nail. A company press release credited me for core narrative design. It wasn't applause, it was architecture. I didn't speak at the launch. I built the launch. Part 7, Vingana Silenciosa. The next time we were in the same room, it wasn't a kitchen. It was a conference stage. He was seated in the audience, third row. I was the keynote. Clarice introduced me not as Nathan's wife, but as the strategist who built the uncredited. The silence was seismic. I stepped onto the stage in black. No branding. No performative smile. Just one slide, invisible labor, building from the shadows. I didn't name him. I didn't need to. The timeline spoke for itself. I showed slides of redacted documents. Draft titles. Annotated launch pages. Track changes with my initials. In the margin. The audience didn't breathe. Because truth, when documented, demands stillness. He watched without blinking. Not because he was stunned, but because he knew. He knew the exact moment the world shifted. It wasn't at the launch. It was at the correction. After the talk, I walked past him. He stood, opened his mouth. I raised a hand, palm open. Not to silence. To stop the rewrite. Because the book was already closed. Days later, an email arrived from his team, Elise, we'd like to discuss a co-author agreement. I forwarded it to Clarice's legal rep. She wrote 2 words, already. Filed. He was late to the table. And this time, I wasn't serving. At a gala honoring women in innovation, my name was called. Not his. Not ours. Mine. I stood in silver. He watched from the back of the award. A pen. Not symbolic. Functional. With my initials engraved. A callback. To everything I gave away, and was now reclaiming. I built a new agency. One that credited every writer. Every strategist. Every woman behind the speech. I named it Margin Notes. Because the real story often lives in the edges. His company plateaued. Investors stopped quoting him. Because narratives need origin. And he had none left to steal. The story, finally, belonged to me. I archived the old files. Label, no. Longer necessary. Not out of bitterness. Out of closure. Because silence served its role. Now legacy would take over. He tried to apologize again. Sent flowers. A note, you were always the backbone. I didn't respond. I donated the bouquet. Because recognition, when delayed, turns into strategy. I walked by his office once. The receptionist called me Mrs. Warren. I corrected her. It's Elise. Just Elise. Because I wasn't anyone's suffix. I was the sentence that ended his version. I wake up now without waiting for emails. No timelines to fix. No sentences to rewrite for someone else's glory. My words are mine. Typed in daylight. Read aloud with credit. Published with pride. My office is minimalist. A single wooden desk. 3 potted plants. And a framed page above my chair, the original launch script. My edits in red. A line circled, purpose drives product. Under it, EW. My daughter visits sometimes. She scribbles drawings beside my legal documents. She once asked, did you really build a company with your words? I said, no, love. I built truth from silence. She nodded like she understood. I host writing labs for women now. Teach them how to hold credit. How to draft with power. How to say, that's mine, without screaming. Just with proof. Timestamps, and stillness. It catches on. I don't avoid Nathan anymore. I outgrew him. He exists in articles I don't click on. Panels I'm not asked to join, because I keynote now. He tried to retell. But I already published. And the world. Read me first. I bought a cabin by the lake. No Wi-Fi. Just notebooks, ink, and my voice. I go there when I need to remember that legacy doesn't require noise. Just direction. And authorship. I filed for a name correction. Dropped, Warren. Signed everything as Elise Hartman again. My birth name. My author name. The only name. That never belonged to someone else. My first solo book hit shelves last fall. Title, The Draft That Spoke. It wasn't a memoir. It was a manual. For women who built empires from margins. The dedication was one line, to every erased voice. Write louder. One night, Clarice texted me. Saw your interview. You looked unshakable. I replied, I finally feel published. She sent one word, legacy. And I saved the message. At a dinner in DC, a young woman approached me. She whispered, I'm in the background of a man's startup too. I handed her my card. Said, you won't be forever. Let's build your stage. I updated my resume. Not because I needed work. But because I needed history to reflect me. Line 1, founder, margin notes. Line 2, co-creator, VoltNet narrative. Line 3, architect of my own silence. Converted into story. He messaged once more. Just a link to an old photo of us. Captioned, we were a good team. I didn't open it. I already knew what it looked like. Half visible. Like I used to be now, I sit across from editors. They don't ask who I wrote for. They ask what I'm building next. And I smile. Because building for myself tastes different. Permanent, every night, I turn off my screen. Close the notebook. Light the same candle, cedar and resolve. The flame is steady now. And no one else holds the match.